饭上下的面条有腊肉，还有白菜，你们看，虽然在大山上，但是味道刚刚的，你们看，挺有口味的。
Many believe that the worst kinds of abuse happen behind closed doors, where the monster smiles at the world and becomes the devil when no one is looking. But that wasn't the case for popular TikToker Lamu, a Chinese influencer who was doused in gasoline and set on fire by her ex-husband right in the middle of a live stream. This wasn't a monster that hid from the world. He didn't wait for the perfect dark corner to attack. He didn't mind the hundreds of thousands of her fans worldwide that would witness the gruesome accident. A warm welcome to true family crime stories. To our loyal subscribers and viewers, we're deeply thankful for your unwavering support and trust in our content. Your subscription means the world to us, and we're honored that you've chosen to join our community. We look forward to continuing to share compelling, thought-provoking, and informative content with you in the future. Where can the system draw a line between crime and absolute inhumanity? What happens when a live stream meant to be fun and entertaining leads to the most horrific accident experienced in Douyin, the China version of TikTok? It was a warm afternoon in September 2020, and Lamu was getting ready for her live stream. She was at home, dressed up and in front of the camera when her ex-husband arrived, and all the viewers could see from then on was a blank screen with dead air. While the whole world believed it was a glitch, the truth later uncovered rocked China for the coming years. It all started as a routine live stream. Lamu appeared as the usual, bright, cheerful woman in her kitchen, sharing a glimpse of her simple rural life. But in an instant, that peaceful moment was shattered. Viewers had no idea they had just witnessed the beginning of a horrific crime, one that would spark outrage across an entire nation. Lamu, a beloved Douyin vlogger in China, was set on fire by her ex-husband. A brutal act of violence carried out in real time. A crime so horrifying it left people questioning how vile and evil the heart of a human can be. Her story isn't just about a shocking murder. It's about a system that failed her, a culture of silence, and a final act of cruelty that the world could not ignore. Lamu might have been just another woman enduring the harsh reality of a wrong choice of husband. She wanted peace. She wanted to live. She wanted love. But everything she'd ever worked for had been snatched away from her in one day. The most chilling encounter that left her in grueling pains for the next 2 weeks of her short life. Amachu, a Tibetan mother of 2, was a 30-year-old ethnic minority vlogger. She went by the name Lamu and had more than 770,000 followers on Douyin, China's version of TikTok. Lamu was a cheerful woman. She loved her social media life and always wore a bright smile for her fans. She regularly posted cheerful videos of her rural life in the mountains, telling her fans about living a little far off from the hustle and bustle of the city. Her very popular contents featured her lip-syncing, cooking traditional Chinese cuisines, and sometimes trying out modern dishes to excite her social media family. She was also known for foraging or spending time with her family. Lamu would sometimes wear traditional Tibetan clothing in her videos, and followers often praised her for not wearing makeup and still looking flawlessly beautiful. But little did they know that the outward, smiling mother was facing a turbulent life, trying to shield her children from the clutches of a vile and abusive man. Lamu wasn't famous in the way most influencers are. She wasn't chasing viral trends or promoting luxury brands. She didn't live in a bustling city or lead a glamorous life. She wasn't the rage when it came to lifestyle updates or fashion or trendy things. Instead, she found joy in the simple things. She lived in the remote mountains of Sichuan province, sharing her daily life with the world through Douyin. Lamu had first started influencing with showing her small family to the world, her beloved father and her sister, as well as her 2 kids whom she adored. Her videos were peaceful, soothing, and simple. She cooked, foraged, and spent time with her family, allowing her followers to escape into the beauty of rural life, which was refreshingly different from the busy city they were used to. Lamu was really admired and revered for her simplicity and natural beauty. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't stage her content. She didn't dress up and sit in front of the mirror with fancy lights and layers of concealer. She was a true reflection of nature. She was real, and that's why people loved her. Lamu was proud of her rural life. She often made jokes about it and displayed her attachment to her small village. To prove her love for her reality, her Douyin bio read, "It's not that I don't like city life, but I want to be by my father's side. I need to rely on the mountains to earn an income. I want to share the treasures of the mountains with more people." She was a daughter, a mother of 2 lovely kids, a sister, a woman who found happiness in the simplest moments. But behind her gentle demeanor, behind the quiet beauty of her world, there was something much darker, something she never would have imagined would consume her, something that no one else saw until it was too late. Lamu's life may have seemed beautiful and admirable on screen, but behind the camera, she was trapped in a nightmare. Her ex-husband, Tang Lu, was nothing like her beautiful life. He didn't fit into her perfect picture. He was a monster, something she had to hide in the shadows, someone she couldn't show to the whole world. Lamu and Tang Lu had met at a time when Lamu was ready to have a family. They didn't court for long, and they finally got married in 2009. The mother of 2 confided in her sister that from the very beginning their relationship was marked by cruelty. Tang Lu was a man who was used to getting his own way, and he didn't mind who got hurt in the process, even his own wife. Lamu's family would later reveal that Tang had beaten her, repeatedly. She endured it for years, believing she had no way out of the constant abuse. Despite being subjected to this cruel treatment, Lamu held on to the belief that her husband would maybe one day change. But that change wasn't to come, at least not in her lifetime. A few months down the line, and she finally had children with Tang Lu. The abuse and domestic violence didn't stop, and she had been too far deep to retrace her path. She felt stuck and decided to stay for her children, for her family, for her own safety and survival. But how long could a woman endure in the hands of a violent man? How long would a woman act like domestic abuse was the natural order in her home? How long could a woman who had been so trained by the system to keep quiet take before she looked for a way out? After 2 children with Tang Lu, Lamu decided that she'd had enough. She was ready to start over, to let go of the man who had made her life a living hell. But all attempts to escape her abusive marriage were met with systemic obstacles. Despite reporting the abuse to local authorities, her pleas were largely ignored. The authorities didn't intervene. They didn't heed her plea or cry, and Lamu finally resigned to fate. Her family, after her death, explained the tendency of the legal system to dismiss domestic violence as a private matter. This negligence ultimately led to her tragic demise. Despite her best efforts to endure, Lamu couldn't hang in there for longer. She followed through the tiring process of the legal system, fighting for her freedom against all odds. In June of 2020, there was light at the end of the dark tunnel, and Lamu got her freedom. She finally found the strength to leave. She divorced Tang officially, hoping to rebuild what was left of her shattered life, hoping to let go of the hurt and pick up her broken pieces to start over. But Tang refused to let her go. Like so many abusers, he saw her freedom as an insult, a challenge to his authority, and a slap on his strength as her leader. Lamu pleaded. She stood her ground. She moved out of their home. But Tang Lu refused to be swayed. He wasn't done with her yet, and there was no way he was letting her slip away. And so he made her a prisoner once again. If there was something Lamu loved, then it was her family. Her admiration and sacrifices for her family could be seen in her daily life. Her decision to move in with her father and be close to their small village was a sign that for her, family would always come first. Lamu loved and cherished her children. She did everything to get a good life for them, to feed them, to make sure they had everything they needed. And this was exactly what Tang knew would be her weakness. Weeks after their first divorce, in a sickening act of control, he issued an unthinkable threat. If she didn't return to him, he would kill one of their children. Many would ask, what kind of monster does that? Well, Tang didn't mind being called a monster. He didn't hide his violence and abuse, and he didn't mind breaking the law to get his way. After their divorce, Tang had gotten custody of one of their 2 children, and this was his bargaining chip to get Lamu back into the darkness she had struggled so hard to free herself from. Faced with an impossible choice, Lamu agreed to remarry him, hoping to save her child and with the blind hope that maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. But nothing changed. The violence continued. The hurt and abuse became a lifestyle, and Tang hadn't changed at all. Lamu did all she could to preach peace. But Tang wasn't ready for peace. He was a man that wanted to be feared, a man that wanted control, and he took pleasure in always hurting her. So once again, despite her decision to come back, she knew she had to escape. This time she ran for good. After Lamu had been gone for weeks, Tang realized that he had lost control of his wife, his property, a woman he thought would never leave him. Tang was furious. He searched for her, interrogated her relatives, demanded to know where she had gone. One of his attempts to find her led him to Lamu's sister, Juoma, who knew what Lamu had passed through in his hands, and so refused to give up the location of her sister. She stood her ground despite his threats, and so he beats her too. Lamu's family was terrified. They realized how dangerous Tang had gotten, and again, they went to the police. They reported everything, the abuse, the threats, the violence against their daughters. But as the family later revealed, the authorities did nothing. Imagine being in Lamu's shoes, after ending years of abuse, finally finding the strength to leave, only to be dragged back by a chilling threat of losing your own child. Imagine the helplessness and despair she felt when she realized that there was no one coming to help her. What does one do when the system meant to protect becomes neglectful? What do you do? Where do you go? How do you fight a system that refuses to protect you? For so many women, this isn't just Lamu's story, it's theirs too. A story of hopelessness and pain, a story of hurt and rejection, a sickening tale of helplessness that forces one to wonder how unfair the world is, how deeply humans can hurt each other, and if there will ever be an end to the cruelty. And tragically, for Lamu, the worst was yet to come. Lamu had started her live stream like any other. A quiet moment in her kitchen with a wide smile on her face and a bubbly personality that all the years of abuse hadn't diminished. She wore a cheerful smile always, but beneath that happy exterior was a woman so broken that she was fighting every day to fix what fragments were left of her life. That afternoon, her followers tuned in, expecting to see the familiar, soothing presence that had made them love her. Instead, all they saw was a chilling darkness. Her screen went black. At first, viewers thought it was a glitch, maybe a power outage, a bad connection. But the truth was far more horrifying, because at that very moment Lamu's past had come back to destroy her, and she wouldn't live to tell the story. Her ex-husband, Tang Lu, had broken into her father's home. He carried a machete and a container of gasoline. Before Lamu could react, before she could reach for help, before she could escape, he doused her in fuel. And then he set her on fire. The flames consumed her instantly. Her screams never reached her audience. The only thing they saw was the sudden end of the broadcast. The only thing they heard was silence. Lamu had fought for so long. She had endured years of suffering, tried to escape, sought help. She had done everything she could to free herself from Tang Lu. But in the end, he was still the death of her. Her family rushed to her medical aid, desperately trying to put out the flames. But the damage was already done. The burns covered 90% of her body. She was rushed to a local hospital, but her injuries were too severe. She was transferred to Sichuan Provincial People's Hospital, where doctors fought to keep her alive. Her family, desperate for a miracle, turned to her followers for help. She had built a family forged out of such deep love and connection that they believed their fan could save her life. So when Lamu's family reached out, her fans answered. In just 24 hours, her fans raised over 1 million yuan for her medical expenses. Strangers who had never met her, who had only known her through a screen, donated whatever they could just to make sure she pulled through. It was a testament to how much she was loved, of how much Lemu was valued and loved by those around her. Her online family ended up being her refuge, her biggest support system, and her family's shoulder to lean on. But no matter how much they struggled, no matter how much they tried to support her, even their love wasn't enough to save her. 2 weeks after the devastating accident on September 30th, Lamu succumbed to her injuries. She was 30 years old. Her life had been taken in the most brutal way imaginable. But even in death, her story was far from over. Because this time the world was listening. The world was listening to the pain of a mother whose life had been snatched from her hands. A mother, a sister, a beautiful soul who had lost her joy, her peace, her safety, and finally, her life. Lamu's death became a raging storm across China. Her followers were devastated. The people in her village were horrified. And on social media, the outrage spread like wildfire. More than 70 million people took to the internet to demand justice. Where were the police when she needed help? One user asked. Why wasn't he stopped before it was too late? How many more women have to suffer before something changes? Lamu's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a wake-up call. A reminder that domestic violence isn't just behind closed doors. It's in our communities, in our legal systems, in the silence that allows abusers to keep hurting their victims. And this time, people refused to stay silent. For once, the justice system moved quickly. Tang Lu was arrested almost immediately. His crime had been public, undeniable, impossible to ignore. The evidence was overwhelming. The outrage was impossible to contain. The court didn't hesitate. In October 2021, just a year after Lamu's death, in response to the public outcry, Tang Lu was swiftly arrested, tried, and sentenced to death for intentional homicide. His execution in July 2022 was seen by many as a measure of justice for Lamu. It was rare, a swift, severe punishment, but for many it still wasn't enough. Because it didn't change what had already happened. It didn't bring Lamu back. It didn't erase the years of suffering she had endured. It didn't bring back the happy, loving, and humorous influencer. For over 2 years, Tang Lu sat on death row. Some argued that his execution wouldn't change anything, that it wouldn't undo the damage he had caused, that justice had come too late. But for Lamu's family, for the people who had loved her, who had watched her suffer, who had tried to save her, his punishment mattered. Because he had stolen something irreplaceable, a daughter, a mother, a sister, a friend. Many believed that although Lamu might never come back, Tang Lu would no longer be able to hurt others. The vulnerable would be saved from him, and the likes of him would be reminded that justice was still alive. And perhaps it would stop the rising level of domestic violence. On January 7th, 2023, the sentence was finally carried out. Tang Lu was executed. There were no last-minute appeals, no reduced sentence, no escape. For the first time, he faced the consequences of his actions. A bold and proud man as he was, he succumbed to his penalty, and justice was served. But justice, no matter how swift, is never enough when a life is lost. Lamu should have been safe. She should have been protected. She should still be here. But instead, her children are now left in the care of Tang Lu's mother, a woman who seemed not to stand against his son's actions, rather describing him as loyal, despite the evidence presented. In the meantime, Lamu's older sister, Juoma, has taken over the vlogger's Douyin account, posting updates on her family's situation and tearful farewell messages to her sister. In one of her videos, Juoma seemingly wrote to Lamu, "I'm sorry. A year has passed and I still can't give you an explanation. The most I've been able to do is protect those you cared about and loved," she continued. "In the next life, I'll be your older brother and protect you well. Rest in peace, little sister." Her story is not just a tragedy, it is a warning, a plea for change, a reminder that behind every smiling face, behind every cheerful personality, there is a real pain, there is a fight for survival, and something darker than meets the eyes. All she wanted was love. All she wanted was to be with her family, to thrill her fans with the wonder of rural life, to live the best life that she could afford. But for Lamu, that simple dream was stolen. A smile, no matter how wide, can hide 1,000 scars. Lamu proved this in this heart-shattering tale of pain, survival, and human cruelty. Sometimes monsters don't hide. They are right within sight, in the people we love the most. Lamu's story is a painful reminder of the consequences of silence and inaction. It's a story of a woman who wanted nothing more than to live a simple, happy life, but was denied even that. It's also a call to action. Domestic violence isn't a private matter. It's a societal issue that requires collective effort to address. Lamu's death should not be in vain. Her story must fuel change, inspire conversations, and push societies around the world to better protect those who suffer in silence. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please know that help is available. Reach out to a trusted friend, family member, or local support service. You are not alone, and your voice matters. Lamu's life may have been cut short, but her spirit lives on in the hearts of her fans, her family, and everyone who fights to ensure that no one else has to endure what she did. Thank you for joining us on True Crime Family Stories. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.